The night was cold and the junkyard was silent except for the soft hum of broken machines. Piles of scrap metal, old ship parts, and forgotten cargo containers lay scattered like the bones of dead giants. No one cared about this place anymore except for one man. His name was Daniel. He was a simple human mechanic. Poor and tired of life's struggles, Daniel often came to the alien junkyard hoping to find something he could repair and sell. Most times he found nothing but rust and dust. But tonight felt different. As he walked between the mountains of metal, his eyes stopped on an old space container. It was large gray and covered with rust. The lock was broken. The markings were faded, and it looked like it had not been touched in years. Something about it pulled him closer. The auctioneer, a fat alien merchant with 3 eyes, laughed when Daniel pointed at it. That thing? Worthless scrap. Even the rats left it long ago. The alien sneered. But if you want it, 2 credits, no more. Daniel hesitated. He had only a few credits left in his pocket, just enough for food. But his gut whispered that this container was special. So he sighed, handed over 2 credits, and said, "I'll take it." The alien merchant shook his head and mocked him. "A fool's purchase, human. You just wasted your money." But Daniel ignored the laughter and called for the yard's loader machine to carry the container to his small workshop on the edge of town. The machine groaned as it dragged the heavy box. Dust and sparks filled the air. Inside his workshop, Daniel wiped sweat from his brow and stared at the strange container. The numbers on its side were unreadable, burned away by time. He leaned down, pressing his ear to the cold metal. That was when he heard it. A faint sound, soft and strange, almost like a voice. It was impossible. He pulled back quickly, shaking his head. "Just my imagination," he whispered. But deep inside he knew it was not. Hours passed. The night grew darker. The junkyard fell silent outside. Daniel sat by his workbench, tools in hand, but he could not focus. His eyes kept moving to the container. His mind asked questions he could not answer. Why was it sealed? What was inside? Suddenly the container shook. It was only for a second, but he saw it. The metal walls trembled like something alive had moved inside. His heart raced, sweat rolled down his back. Daniel grabbed a flashlight and walked closer. The beam of light showed deep scratches around the lock, as if something or someone had tried to break out. He stepped back, his hands trembling. The air grew colder, and then, slowly, a thin fog leaked from a crack in the metal. It curled across the workshop floor like a ghostly hand. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He whispered, "What in the stars is this?" Then it happened again, clearer this time. A soft, melodic voice came from inside, weak and desperate. "Please, help!" Daniel froze. His mind screamed at him to run, to get rid of the cursed container. But his heart told him to stay. The voice was not dangerous. It was begging, crying. He stepped forward, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. The container pulsed with a faint glow. Like a heartbeat, every second he stood there. The glow grew stronger. The sound came again. This time louder. "Please, let us out." "Us?" Daniel whispered. His chest tightened. He realized it was not just one voice, but several, layered, echoing, blending together in harmony. Fear and curiosity battled inside him. He grabbed his tools, knelt by the lock, and stared at it. It looked old, damaged, easy to break, but should he? What if it was something dangerous? What if he unleashed a nightmare? But the voices were soft, not cruel. They sounded like prisoners. Not monsters. They sounded alive, suffering, forgotten. Daniel's hands shook as he raised the tool to the lock. He whispered to himself, "You spent 2 credits on this. Might as well find out what you bought." The lock sparked as he worked. The container groaned, shaking again. This time the voices cried out together, their tone urgent, hopeful, then silence, complete silence. Daniel pulled back, panting. His flashlight flickered. The workshop lights buzzed. For a moment he thought he had gone mad. But then, the container gave one final shudder, and from the cracks came a blinding flash of blue light. The glow was so bright that Daniel stumbled backward. Shielding his eyes, his heart pounded like a drum. When the light dimmed, the workshop smelled of ozone and something sweet. Like flowers after rain, Daniel lowered his arm, his eyes wide. The lock was still holding, but barely. It looked ready to snap. The voices were quiet now, but he knew they were waiting, watching, hoping. Daniel stood frozen, the weight of his decision pressing on him. He was just a poor human mechanic. He never asked for adventure, never asked for mystery, And yet here it was, inside a rusty container he bought for only 2 credits. His lips trembled as he whispered, "What have I done?" The container glowed again, stronger this time. A single shadow moved inside, pressing against the walls. The shape was tall, slender, unmistakably alive. Daniel's fear turned to pure shock. For the first time he realized the truth. He had not bought scrap. He had not bought junk. Inside that rusty container was something, or someone, that would change his life forever. And the voices whispered one last time, "Please, let us in." Daniel's hand hovered above the lock. Heart racing. His choice would decide everything. The workshop lights flickered again, and the story of the rusty container had only just begun. Daniel stood frozen in front of the glowing container. His breath was heavy and his heart pounded like a hammer inside his chest. The rusty lock rattled as if something inside was pushing against it. He could still hear the faint echo of those voices, soft and desperate, begging him to open the door. For a moment, Daniel thought of running. He was only a mechanic, not a soldier, not an explorer. He had never faced anything like this, but something deep inside told him he could not leave. Something or someone needed him. Slowly he picked up his crowbar. His hands trembled, but his jaw tightened with courage. "All right," he whispered. "Let's see what's inside." He shoved the crowbar into the lock and pressed hard. The old metal screeched, sparks flew, and the lock snapped with a sharp crack. The container groaned as the doors loosened. A hiss of fog burst out, filling the workshop with a strange cold mist. It smelled sweet and metallic. Daniel coughed, covering his mouth. His flashlight beam cut through the fog, and then he saw movement. A hand, slender, glowing faintly blue, slid out of the darkness and gripped the edge of the door. Daniel froze. His legs wanted to run, but his eyes could not look away. Slowly, a figure stepped out. She was tall, her skin shining with a faint silver glow under the workshop light. Her hair floated as if moved by water, and her eyes glowed softly like twin stars. She looked weak, her body trembling as she took her first step outside. Daniel's jaw dropped. He could not believe his eyes. He had expected a monster, maybe a wild alien beast, but instead, standing before him was a woman, an alien woman unlike anything he had ever seen. Her lips parted and a weak voice escaped. "Thank you." Daniel's heart skipped. He swallowed hard and stepped back. "What are you?" he whispered. The alien woman stumbled. Nearly falling, Daniel caught her without thinking. Her body was cold, trembling, as if she had been locked away for years. She looked at him with eyes full of exhaustion but also trust. "There are more," she whispered softly. "Please, don't leave them inside." Daniel's mind spun. "More? How many more?" He turned his flashlight back toward the container. Through the mist he saw shadows moving, shapes pressing against the inner walls. The sound of voices came again, this time clearer. Different tones blending together. 8, he realized. His stomach turned. 8 voices, 8 beings. The first woman clung weakly to his arm. Her glow flickered like a dying flame. Daniel grabbed a blanket from his workbench and wrapped it around her shoulders. She shivered but gave him a faint smile. It was the kind of smile that carried both gratitude and sorrow. He turned back to the container. His crowbar still in hand, he pulled the doors wider, and the mist spilled out like a living fog. His eyes widened as more figures appeared, 7 more shapes inside. All huddled together, their bodies were thin, their movements slow, each of them different, but each carried the same glow of strange beauty. Shimmering hair, shining scales, crystal-like eyes, wings that twitched weakly as if too heavy to lift. Daniel's knees felt weak. He whispered, "This can't be real," but it was real. 8 alien women trapped in a rusty container, sold as junk, forgotten by everyone, and he, the man who spent only 2 credits, was the one who had opened their prison. The women whispered in unison, their voices soft but full of life. "Thank you, human." Daniel stepped back. Breathing hard, he did not know what to say. He had bought scrap metal, not people, not prisoners. He rubbed his forehead, whispering to himself, "What did I get myself into?" One of the women, with long golden hair that shimmered even in the weak light, stepped forward. Her voice was stronger than the rest. "We were captives," she said, "sold, traded, forgotten. We would have died in that box." Daniel looked at her, confused. Why were you in there? Who put you inside?" The golden-haired woman lowered her eyes. "The Empire," she whispered. "We are not just women. We are daughters of leaders, princesses of lost houses, prizes stolen in war." Daniel's eyes widened, his heart sank. He realized the truth. These were not just aliens, they were royalty, and whoever had put them inside that container would never let them go without a fight. The first woman, still wrapped in his blanket, touched his arm gently. Her voice was weak but steady. "You risked yourself to open the container. Now our lives are tied to yours." Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I'm just a mechanic. I didn't mean to." But before he could finish, the workshop lights flickered again. A loud thump shook the ground outside. Daniel's heart leapt. He rushed to the window and peeked out in the distance. Across the junkyard, shadows moved. A group of mercenaries, armed and armored, scanned the ground with glowing eyes and sharp weapons. Their voices carried in the night. "The signal came from here. Find the container now." Daniel's blood went cold. They had been found already. He turned back to the 8 women, his hands clenched. "You need to hide, now." The golden-haired one nodded, her eyes burning with urgency. The others moved slowly, still weak from years of captivity. Daniel rushed to clear a space beneath his workbench and behind old engine parts. He helped them crawl inside, covering them with scrap to keep them hidden. The first woman grabbed his hand before he left. Her eyes glowed with quiet strength. "You freed us, Daniel. Don't let them take us back." Daniel swallowed hard. He had never been a hero, never wanted to be one. But tonight fate had chosen him. He picked up his wrench, the only weapon he had. His heart pounded. The mercenaries' footsteps grew louder, and outside the workshop the hunt had already begun. The workshop was dark except for the dim glow of broken lights and the faint silver radiance coming from the women hidden under Daniel's workbench. Outside, the mercenaries' voices grew louder, their boots crunching on gravel as they drew closer. Daniel's heart raced. He had hidden the 8 women as best as he could, but he knew it wouldn't be enough if the mercenaries forced their way inside. He gripped his wrench tighter, his knuckles white. A loud bang rattled the door. "Open up, human," one of the mercenaries shouted. "We know you have something that doesn't belong to you." Daniel froze. He could feel the alien women trembling in fear behind him. He knew if he stayed silent, they might break down the door anyway. He swallowed hard and forced his voice to stay steady. "This is my workshop. I bought my scrap fair and square. Go bother someone else." Another bang followed, stronger. The metal door shook on its hinges. The mercenaries weren't planning to leave. Suddenly, from under the workbench, one of the women whispered, "Daniel." He turned and saw her, different from the rest. Her skin shimmered like polished crystal, and faint wings folded against her back. She looked weak, but her glowing eyes carried fire. "You cannot fight them alone," she said softly. "But we can't help you either." "Not yet," Daniel frowned. "Not yet? What do you mean?" The golden-haired woman from before answered, her voice trembling but full of truth. "We carry powers from our bloodlines, each of us different, each of us dangerous to the Empire. That is why they locked us away. But years in the container drained us. Our strength will return, but slowly." Daniel's chest tightened. 8 alien women, each with powers. He had no time to process it, because the door suddenly gave way, crashing inward. 3 mercenaries stepped inside with glowing rifles. Their armor was black, their helmets shining red. Daniel stepped forward, blocking their view of the workbench. His wrench in hand, he knew it was a hopeless defense. But he would not move. One mercenary sneered. "Move aside, human. You have no idea what you're protecting." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Doesn't matter. You're not taking anything from here." The mercenaries laughed. "Brave, but stupid." They raised their weapons. Before they could fire, a sudden shimmer of light spread across the room. Daniel turned. One of the alien women had crawled out, her silver hair glowing like moonlight. She lifted her hand weakly, and for a second, the air vibrated. The mercenaries staggered, their helmets buzzing with static. "Go back," she shouted in a voice far stronger than her body. The sound was like music, sharp and commanding. The mercenaries stumbled, disoriented. Daniel seized the chance, swinging his wrench into one of their helmets. Sparks flew as the mercenary crashed to the floor. The others roared in anger. "They're here." "Call for backup!" Daniel's stomach dropped. Backup meant more soldiers, more danger. He grabbed the silver-haired woman and pulled her back towards safety. The mercenaries fired wildly. A beam struck the wall, blowing apart Daniel's tools. The workshop filled with smoke and fire. Inside the chaos, the alien women whispered among themselves. Each of them knew they were too weak to unleash their true strength. But together they could give Daniel a chance. One woman with glowing blue eyes reached out, touching the floor, The metal rippled slightly under her hand. Another with scaled arms breathed out, releasing a faint mist that made the air heavy and slowed the mercenaries' movements. Daniel realized they were trying. They wanted to fight beside him, even if their powers were weak. He clenched his teeth, his body shook with fear. But his mind was clear. He had to protect them until they recovered. The golden-haired leader whispered, "Daniel, if we fall back now, we survive. If we fight here, they'll call more. You must get us out." Her words struck him like lightning. He couldn't hold this workshop forever. He needed to run. He needed to save them. Daniel swung his wrench one last time, knocking the second mercenary into a pile of scrap. The third aimed at him, but a sudden flash of silver hair blinded the soldier. A cry of pain echoed as one of the alien women used the last of her strength to push the attacker back. "Now, Daniel," she shouted. "Take us away!" Daniel didn't think twice. He rushed to the workbench and pulled away the scrap that hid the rest of the women. "Out now. Move," he yelled. The 8 alien women stumbled forward, their bodies weak but their eyes full of hope. They gathered around him, their glowing forms lighting up the smoke-filled room. For a moment Daniel stared at them all together, and his breath caught in his throat. 8 beauties, each unique and breathtaking, standing in the ruins of his workshop, one with crystal skin, one with wings, one with scales, another with hair like golden fire, another with glowing eyes like the sea. They were different, but together they looked like a vision out of legend. Daniel whispered to himself, 8. 8 of you, one of them smiled faintly, her voice soft. "Yes, and now we are yours to protect?" The mercenaries outside roared. Reinforcements were arriving. Heavy footsteps thundered closer. The ground shook, Daniel's chest tightened. He had no plan, only his instincts. He grabbed his bag of tools and looked at the women. "We need to run now." The golden-haired one nodded. "Lead the way, human." Together, they rushed out the back of the workshop into the shadows of the junkyard. Smoke rose behind them. Shouts filled the air. And the hunt had truly begun, but as they fled, Daniel couldn't shake the thought that for only 2 credits he had gained something priceless. 8 alien princesses whose beauty and power could change the galaxy, and now every force in the Empire would come for them. The night air was thick with smoke as Daniel led the 8 alien women through the maze of rusted ship parts and broken engines in the junkyard. Their faint glowing bodies flickered like small lanterns in the dark. He waved at them to stay close. His heart beating like thunder. Behind them, the mercenaries shouted orders. Heavy boots pounded against the ground. The sound of weapons charging echoed through the air. The Empire's hunters were not going to stop until they had their prize. Daniel ducked behind a pile of scrap metal. Pulling the women down with him, he whispered urgently, "Stay quiet. Don't move unless I say." The golden-haired woman nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. "They are trained soldiers," she whispered. "If they find us now, none of us will escape." Daniel gritted his teeth. He was just a mechanic, not a soldier. But when he looked at the weak and trembling figures beside him, he felt a fire grow in his chest. He couldn't let them be taken. Not after everything. The mercenaries spread out, flashlights sweeping across the junkyard. Their leader's voice rang out, "Find the human and the cargo. The Empire wants them alive." One of the alien women, the one with crystal-like skin, leaned toward Daniel. "They will track us easily. We cannot hide forever," Daniel thought quickly. His eyes darted across the junkyard. He spotted an old loader bot lying broken nearby. His mechanic's mind raced. "If I can get that thing moving again, maybe it'll distract them." He pulled his toolkit out of his bag. His hands moved fast, opening the bot's chest panel. Sparks danced as he reconnected wires. The alien women watched silently, their breaths quick. The mercenaries' lights grew closer. Their shadows loomed large. Just as one soldier's beam swept toward their hiding spot, Daniel slammed the bot's restart switch. The loader bot roared to life, its engines coughed, and its eyes lit up bright red. Daniel shouted, "Go!" and smacked its side. The machine lurched forward, stomping through the junkyard with loud crashes. The mercenaries spun around, shouting, "There!" "They're escaping that way." Half of them chased after the bot, their weapons firing into the night. Daniel pulled the women the opposite way. Weaving through the piles of scrap, his plan worked. For now. But the golden-haired woman's face was grim. This will not stop them for long. More will come. Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. Then we keep moving. They reached the far side of the junkyard where Daniel's small shuttle rested. It was old, patched with scrap metal and spare parts, but it could still fly. He waved them inside. Hurry. The women stumbled in, their glowing forms filling the tiny cabin. Daniel jumped into the pilot's seat, flipping switches. The engines coughed and groaned, smoke rising from the back. Outside, the mercenaries realized the trick. Their leader roared in anger. Forget the bot. The human has a ship. Blaster fire streaked through the air. Strikes hit the ground around the shuttle, shaking it violently. The alien women gasped, huddling together. Daniel slammed the ignition. The shuttle rattled, but then lifted slowly off the ground. He gripped the controls tightly, sweat dripping down his forehead. Come on, old girl. Don't fail me now. The ship rose higher, creaking and moaning. The junkyard shrank below them. But before Daniel could breathe in relief, 3 mercenary ships shot into the sky. Their engines glowing bright. They're following us, cried the silver-haired woman. Her voice was sharp with fear. Daniel's stomach twisted. His shuttle was no match for trained hunters in military craft. The women's weak powers wouldn't save them in space combat. He had to rely on his brain. Strap in, he shouted, yanking the controls. The shuttle swerved between old cargo towers and broken ship hulls. The mercenary ships fired, beams cutting through the night sky. Daniel's small craft shook with every close hit. Inside the cabin, the alien women held on to each other, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The golden-haired one whispered, almost to herself, "Why does he risk so much for us? He could have left us behind." The woman with scaled arms answered, her voice soft but certain, "Because he is human, and humans are different." Daniel's eyes scanned the junkyard ahead. He spotted a collapsed freighter hull, its massive frame leaning against a ridge. An idea flashed in his mind, risky but his only chance. He dove the shuttle straight toward it. The mercenaries chased. Thinking he was panicking at the last moment, Daniel pulled hard on the controls. The shuttle scraped along the edge of the wreckage, sparks flying. The mercenary ships, moving too fast, slammed into the broken freighter, explosions lighting up the sky. The shockwave rocked the shuttle. Alarms blared. Daniel fought to steady the controls. The women cried out. But somehow the little ship leveled again, limping upward toward the clouds. Silence filled the cabin for a moment. Only the engines groaning and Daniel's heavy breathing could be heard. He looked back at the women, their faces pale with fear but glowing with relief. He gave a shaky smile. "Well, we're not dead yet." One of the women with glowing blue eyes leaned forward, her voice soft. "You saved us again." "Why?" Daniel shrugged, his eyes returning to the stars ahead. "Because nobody else would." The golden-haired woman studied him quietly, then whispered to the others, "The Empire will not stop. They know where we are now. They will send fleets, armies, hunters." Daniel's hand tightened on the controls. His voice was firm. "Then we'll just have to stay one step ahead." The 8 alien women exchanged glances. For the first time since their freedom, they felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this human could protect them. But deep in the distance, beyond the clouds, red lights blinked in the sky. More ships were coming. The hunt had only just begun. The shuttle rattled like an old tin can as it climbed higher into the dark sky. Sparks dripped from the side panels and the engines groaned as if they might die at any second. Daniel's hands gripped the controls tightly, sweat dripping down his forehead behind him. The 8 alien women sat pressed together, their glowing forms lighting up the small cabin. Fear and exhaustion filled their eyes, but also a spark of trust. They had followed him this far, and now their lives rested in his hands. The golden-haired woman leaned forward, her voice sharp but calm. "The Empire won't stop. More ships will come. You must get us somewhere safe." Daniel forced a grin, even though his heart pounded. "Safe isn't a word my ship knows," he muttered. "But I'll try." As if to mock him, the radar screen lit up. 3 more red dots appeared behind them. Closing fast, the mercenaries weren't finished. One of the women, her crystal skin glowing faintly, whispered, "They've locked onto us." Daniel slammed his fist on the console. "Of course they have." He pulled hard on the controls, sending the shuttle into a sharp dive. The women screamed as the ship shook violently. Blaster fire streaked past. One bolt grazing their wing, alarms wailed. Daniel cursed under his breath. His ship was weak, too old for a fight. He couldn't win in the sky. He needed another plan. His eyes darted to the map screen. He spotted a nearby mining moon, abandoned and full of tunnels. If he could reach it, maybe he could hide them inside. He twisted the controls, setting course. "Hold on," he shouted. The shuttle roared forward, smoke trailing from its engines. The mercenary ships fired again. The cabin rattled, one panel sparking. The women clung to each other, their voices trembling in fear. Then something unexpected happened. The woman with wings closed her eyes, her feathers glowing faintly. A soft wind filled the cabin. Even though they were in space, the shuttle steadied. The controls easier to manage, Daniel's eyes widened. "You're helping me fly?" Her weak voice whispered. "Not for long, but—" "Yes," Daniel grinned. "Then let's make it count." The shuttle dived low, weaving through asteroid fragments. The mercenaries followed, firing wildly. One rock shattered beside them, pieces scraping against the hull inside. The golden-haired woman grabbed Daniel's arm. "You risk yourself again and again." "Why?" Daniel didn't look at her, his eyes locked on the sky ahead. "Because you're not just cargo," he said firmly. "You're people. You deserve to live." The words struck the women deeply. They had been treated as prizes, as property, never as lives worth saving. Yet this human, this poor mechanic, spoke of them with respect. The mining moon loomed ahead, a massive gray sphere pocked with craters. Daniel angled the shuttle toward a dark canyon. Blaster bolts streaked past, one striking close enough to rock the ship hard. The women gasped, but Daniel held steady. The shuttle dove into the canyon, the walls tight on either side. The mercenary ships chased, their engines roaring louder. Daniel's hands moved quick, pulling switches, cutting power to one engine. The shuttle sputtered, dropped lower, and then vanished into a narrow tunnel just as the mercenaries fired. The enemy ships overshot, their beams striking the canyon walls, rocks collapsing around them. One ship spun out and crashed in flames. The others circled above, searching inside the tunnel. Daniel held his breath, the lights flickering. The shuttle scraped against the walls, sparks raining down. Finally, it slid to a stop deep inside the moon. The cabin went silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Daniel slumped back in his seat, laughing weakly. Well, that was close. The women slowly relaxed, though fear still lingered in their eyes. The one with silver hair touched his shoulder. "You saved us again," she whispered. "Even when you had no reason to." Daniel looked at her, then at all of them. "Maybe I had a reason," he said softly. "Maybe no one else will ever fight for you. So I will." The golden-haired woman's eyes softened, her voice almost breaking. "You don't even know who we are." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Don't need to. I just know you're worth more than a rusty container." For the first time since their freedom, the women laughed softly. It was a fragile sound, but it carried warmth. Yet the peace did not last. Outside, engines roared. The mercenary ships were landing nearby, searching the tunnels. The crystal-skinned woman whispered in fear. "They're not giving up." Daniel stood, grabbing a flashlight and his wrench. His voice was firm. "Then we don't wait here like prey. We move." The golden-haired woman rose too, her glow stronger now. "We are weak, but not helpless." The other women nodded, their faint powers flickering back, mist swirling, wings glowing, scales hardening. For the first time, Daniel saw determination in their eyes. He realized they weren't just survivors. They were fighters waiting to rise again. He nodded. "All right then. Let's escape together." The tunnel shook as heavy footsteps echoed closer. The mercenaries had entered the mines. Daniel raised his wrench, the women gathered behind him, their glowing forms shining like stars in the darkness. The hunt was no longer one-sided. For the first time, the human and the 8 alien beauties would fight back, and in that moment, Daniel knew this was only the beginning of something far bigger than himself. The tunnels of the mining moon were silent except for the faint drip of water and the distant echo of mercenaries searching. Daniel led the 8 women deeper into the dark passages, his flashlight flickering against jagged stone walls. Their glowing forms moved quietly behind him, their breath soft, their steps unsteady. They were still weak, but every hour outside the container seemed to bring a little more strength back to them. Daniel stopped at a small cavern wide enough to rest. "We'll stay here for now," he whispered. Setting down his tool bag, he looked at the women, their faces pale but hopeful. "You need food, water, and rest." "I'll figure something out." The silver-haired woman shook her head. "You risk too much already. Why do you care so much for us, human?" Daniel shrugged, pulling out an old emergency kit from his bag. "Because you deserve it," he said simply. He handed out ration bars and a canteen of water. "It's not much, but it'll keep you alive." The women accepted the food carefully, as if it was something precious. The one with scales touched the packet with trembling fingers, whispering, "No one has given us food without a chain attached." Daniel's chest tightened. He sat with them, watching as they ate slowly, their glowing eyes fixed on him. After a while, the golden-haired leader spoke softly. "You freed us, fed us, fought for us."
Do you even know who we are?
Daniel chuckled tiredly. "8 strange women I pulled out of a rusty box." She smiled faintly, her eyes shining. "We are more than that. Each of us was once heir to a house that stood against the Empire. They feared our powers. So they destroyed our worlds and sold us as trophies." Her voice cracked. "We should have died in that container. But you changed our fate." The cavern grew quiet. The women's faces were filled with sorrow, but also with something new. Hope. Daniel leaned back against the wall, rubbing his eyes. "I didn't change your fate, I just couldn't walk away." The woman with crystal skin leaned closer, her glow lighting his tired face. "That is why you are different. You see us as people, not weapons. Not treasures." Daniel looked at her, then at all of them. "You're not just people," he said firmly. "You're survivors, fighters. I've seen it already, even weak." "You pushed back against those mercs." The women exchanged glances, their spirits lifting slightly. For the first time since their escape, laughter filled the cavern, soft and fragile. One of the winged women teased gently. "Daniel, you are braver than you look." Daniel grinned. "Don't spread that rumor. I'd like to live longer." The laughter faded. Replaced by a quiet warmth, the women moved closer, circling around him as if they had finally chosen to trust him completely. But the peace did not last. A faint vibration ran through the cavern floor. Daniel's head snapped up. His mechanic's ear recognized it instantly. Engines. Heavy ones. The golden-haired woman's face went pale. "They're bringing walkers." Daniel's stomach twisted. The Empire wasn't just sending soldiers. They were deploying armored machines built to hunt through tunnels. He grabbed his wrench, his jaw tightening. "Then we don't wait for them, we move." The silver-haired woman placed her hand on his arm, her voice trembling but steady. "We can fight, not as we once could. But together we can slow them." Daniel shook his head. "No, you're still too weak. If you burn yourselves out." But the golden-haired woman cut him off, her eyes glowing brighter now. "Daniel, listen. Alone you cannot stop them. With us, you can." Daniel stared at her, at all of them. Their faces were tired but determined. He realized they were no longer frightened captives. They were beginning to remember who they were. He exhaled slowly, then nodded. "All right. But we do this smart." They moved again. Deeper into the tunnels, Daniel's mind raced. He spotted broken mining equipment scattered around, carts, wires, old fuel cells. His mechanic's instincts kicked in. He grabbed parts, rigging traps as they went. The women followed his instructions, placing wires, pushing carts into position. Even weak, their faint powers helped, lifting heavy stones, bending metal, sending mist to cover their tracks. For the first time, they worked together as a unit, human and alien. When the first walker appeared, its metal legs clanging against the rock, Daniel's trap snapped shut. A fuel cell detonated, the blast shaking the cavern. The walker collapsed in flames. The women gasped in shock. Staring at Daniel, he grinned. "Like I said, smart." More walkers came, soldiers behind them. The tunnels filled with shouts and blaster fire. This time, the women joined the fight. The one with wings created gusts of wind that knocked soldiers off their feet. The scaled woman hardened her skin and blocked fire. The silver-haired one released a burst of sound that rattled the enemy helmets. Daniel swung his wrench like a soldier with a sword. Smashing armor, dodging blasts, together, they pushed back the Empire's hunters. When the battle quieted, smoke filled the tunnels. The women leaned against the walls. Glowing faintly, exhausted but alive, Daniel dropped to his knees. Panting, his clothes torn, his arms bruised. But a fire burned in his eyes. The golden-haired woman walked to him, kneeling beside him. "You fought like one of us," she whispered. "No, you fought better." Daniel chuckled weakly. "Don't flatter me. I might start believing it." The women smiled, their eyes shining with pride. In that dark cavern among smoke and rubble, something unshakable had been born: trust. They were no longer 8 prisoners and 1 human mechanic. They were allies bound by survival. And for the first time, Daniel realized something frightening. This wasn't just about escape anymore. This was war, and now he was part of it. The tunnels of the mining moon shook with every blast. Smoke curled through the air and the faint glow of fire lit up the jagged rocks. Daniel stood in the center of it all, his wrench heavy in his hand, his chest heaving. The 8 alien women gathered around him, weak but alive, their glowing forms shimmering in the dark like stars trapped underground. Their eyes were fixed on him, not as strangers now, but as someone who had proven himself again and again. The golden-haired woman's voice trembled but carried strength. Daniel, the Empire won't stop. They will send more ships. More hunters, more machines. This battle is only the beginning. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, forcing a crooked smile. Yeah, I figured. His voice carried tired humor. But inside, his heart knew the truth. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was standing in the middle of a war. The ground rumbled, and from the tunnel's mouth came the thunder of footsteps. This time it wasn't just soldiers. A massive armored walker stomped into view, its metal body bristling with weapons behind it. Rows of mercenaries poured into the cavern. Their leader pointed and shouted, "There! The human has them! Kill him and take the cargo!" The women gasped, their weak powers flickering like dying flames. They were too drained to fight again. Their eyes turned to Daniel, fear written on every face. Daniel's grip on his wrench tightened, his mind raced. He couldn't take on all of them, not like this. But then his gaze shifted to the broken mining equipment. The loose fuel lines, the unstable rocks above. He smirked. Maybe I don't need to fight them head on. The silver-haired woman's eyes widened as she understood. Daniel, if you do this, you might not survive. Daniel gave her a tired grin. Story of my life, he ran across the cavern. Sparks flying under his boots, the mercenaries opened fire, beams slamming into the ground around him. One grazed his arm, burning his sleeve, but he kept going. He reached the fuel line, wrench in hand, and twisted hard. The pipe burst, releasing a jet of gas that filled the cavern with a sharp hiss. The mercenaries shouted in confusion. Their leader roared, "Stop him!" Daniel grabbed a broken sparking cable from the floor. His heart pounded, sweat stinging his eyes. He looked back at the women, who watched with wide eyes. "For 2 credits, he whispered. "This is one hell of a gamble." He slammed the cable against the ground. Sparks leapt, igniting the gas. The cavern erupted. Fire roared through the tunnel, swallowing the walker and the soldiers in a wave of destruction. Rocks tumbled from above, crushing machines. The explosion shook the moon itself. The women screamed. Shielding themselves, Daniel was thrown across the cavern, crashing against the wall. Pain shot through his body, his vision blurred. But he stayed conscious, his chest burned, but his heart kept beating. When the fire and smoke cleared, silence filled the cavern. The walker was a broken heap of metal, the mercenaries gone. Only the faint crackle of fire remained. Daniel coughed, dragging himself to his knees. His body ached, but he forced a grin. "Still alive," he muttered. "Guess I'm luckier than I thought." The golden-haired woman rushed to him, kneeling beside him. Her glowing hands touched his wounds gently. "You risked your life again," she whispered, her eyes wet. "Why do you keep doing this?" Daniel chuckled weakly. "Because I'm the idiot who spent 2 credits on the best mistake of his life." The women laughed softly, even through their tears. The silver-haired one helped him stand. "You are no mistake, Daniel. You are our protector, our—" "Hero?" Daniel shook his head. "Hero? No, I'm just a mechanic." But the golden-haired woman looked at him with a gaze that pierced deeper than words. "No, you are the man who defied the Empire with nothing but courage. You are the man who made 8 forgotten daughters believe in hope again." The others nodded, their glowing eyes shining with pride. For the first time, they saw him not as a stranger, not even just as their savior, but as the one who had changed everything. Outside the cavern, the sound of engines echoed again. More ships landing. The fight was far from over. Daniel looked at the women, then at the burning wreckage behind them. He sighed. "Well, looks like we're not done running yet." The winged woman smiled faintly. "Then we run together." The golden-haired one placed her hand on his shoulder, her voice soft but firm. "From the moment you opened that container, your life became tied to ours. You are not just a man, Daniel. You are the $2 hero." Daniel blinked, then laughed, shaking his head. $2 hero? That's the dumbest title I've ever heard. But as the women smiled, their glowing forms gathering around him, Daniel realized he didn't hate it. He looked at the tunnel ahead, shadows stretching into the unknown. "All right then," he muttered, tightening his grip on the wrench. "Let's see how far a $2 hero can go." The 8 alien women followed him into the darkness. their faint powers flickering like stars finding their light again, and above them in the vastness of space. The Empire stirred, fleets moving, armies rising. The galaxy did not know it yet, but its fate had just shifted, because a poor mechanic had bought a rusty container for 2 credits, and inside it he found destiny,